Podcast with Aaron Cowk.
I throw balls far. You want good words? Data language.
Talk real sports with a real man.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
And now, here's the be-all, end-all, know-it-all of high school, college, and pro sports. Aaron Skinny Cowk with the Skinny on Sports.
We're talking about practice, man. I'm the MVP.
Good Monday morning out there, Western Oklahoma. Welcome to the Skinny on Sports right here on 98.1 FM, the Sports Animal. Glad to have you along for the next hour. Boy, the overreactions are immense. Season's over in Dallas. Quit playing the games. I'm ready for Trey Lance. Let's skip right over Cooper Rush. We know what he is. Let's get some Trey Lance out there. Really get to see what we got. Because it's clear Dak Prescott is done. Dallas Cowboys are done. I'll tell you what. Sometimes, maybe it's just the other team is really damn good. And right now, the San Francisco 49ers are certainly that. Man, can they play. Brock Purdy. The new Tom Brady. Incredible win last night. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL, that game. Major League Baseball playoffs into the division series. Your Rangers, have they already decided what the parade route is down there?
That's a good question.
They might as well start if they haven't.
I mean, it's the Texas Rangers. That's a pretty big state. That might take a while.
Rangers just bludgeoning everybody. The Orioles got a couple of them. NLDS Game 2s today. Boy, was that not sad on Saturday night to see the end of Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, you know it's October baseball in Dodgerland when Kershaw's doing that.
5 runs without getting an out. Man, it's one of those things that you'll never be able to figure out. As good as he's been, why that happens. The Braves shut out for the first time all year, and it's inside their own stadium. National League's crazy. American League, Rangers are killing it, and then we got a series in the other one with the Twins winning last night. Obviously, college football will hit what happened down in Dallas with the Sooners defeating the Texas Longhorns 34-30. How did that happen? How good is OU? I don't think that's any. I don't know that anybody has ever really thought about that until right now, because everything was waiting on that game, right? Nationally, even right here in this state, how good are they? Is this really like a playoff type team? Is it more of a be in the Big 12 title type team? Talk about that. Oklahoma State, one of the more shocking wins I can remember. Nobody was giving them a chance on Friday night. But what happened? Exactly what we said on Friday. Something good had to happen early, and it did. And that kind of, you could see that everybody started to believe on the team, in the stands. Maybe even the guys on the headset decided, you know what, we might be able to win this game. Now, is this a season turnaround, or is this just like one of those stopgap wins? What was more egregious mess up so far? The 3 quarterbacks, or not letting Ollie Gordon just be the running back? But the Pokes looked very, very good on Friday night. High school football from the weekend as well. We'll hit 4A1, Class A District 1, B1, and then also a couple of games around the state in 4A that were kind of a little bit eye-opening for me, the way they played out especially. 225-9698 is the phone or the text line. 225-9698. Give us a call, shoot us a text. We can talk about any of those things, whatever else might be on your mind. Feel free to chime right in at 225-9698. If you're going to be outside the listening area, stay in touch with the show a couple of ways. Log on to kadsam.com, or you can download the app. The app's got it all. Radio, Penny News, Big Elk and Paragon TV, and, of course, the podcast, Skinny on Sports Podcast, you can find anywhere where new podcasts are. Hi, Jared.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good.
I bet you are. You probably can't think of a more perfect weekend of sports. Now, wait a minute. Thursday, Elk City winning. Friday, Clinton winning. Saturday, the Sooners beating Texas. Plus, Saturday, Sunday, the Rangers. I mean, you can't win them all, Jared.
I was hoping to wake up to see that USC had blew that game.
They tried.
I couldn't stay up for it. I had to go to, but I went to sleep. It was 17-7, and I thought, well, do I want to? I was just too dang tired because my kid had her birthday party on Saturday night, and that's exhausting. So woke up and saw that they won in triple overtime, and they tried every way to lose it. It looked like.
Yeah, there was. I mean,
that would have been
get
the
there.
icing on the cake.
We will get there. It'll happen sooner or later. Maybe this week. Notre Dame.
Well, they didn't look too.
Yeah, ran out of gas. I mean, gosh
Yeah.
dang. 3 straight, now going to be 4 straight top 15 matchups? Or what? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's
Yes.
a load
Yep.
on a team like that, especially with the first 2 being as dramatic as they were. Probably should have seen that coming, honestly. Just where you run out of gas, especially on the road. But that won't be the case this week with that game at home. All right, let's go back to we talked about Elk City and Cache Friday. Then Friday night, Clinton shuts out Weatherford 17-0. What an amazing turnaround here in the last few weeks for Clinton on the defensive side. I mean, that was when you think back to the first couple of weeks, McGinnis, Heritage Hall, the big issues it felt like Clinton was having was all on the defensive side, and now all of a sudden it seems like they've got those shored up. That game, you see the 17-0 score, you think it was so reminiscent of what we saw a week ago, a week before that. Weatherford would get it down there and could not score 3 times, and they could not get it in. Just exactly the way that the Big Elk and Clinton game went.
It got to that point. I had it on, and it got to that point where I was seeing, Weatherford was driving. They got in the red zone, and I thought, watch this. They're not going to be able to put it in. And you almost expected it about the second or third time, like you mentioned. Yeah, the defense kind of bend, don't break, and a lot of pride over there. And I think got down to the point like, okay, we're going to win. Now let's hold it. Let's shut them out.
Right.
There's a little bit more. But the way that game started, they took the opening drive or opening kickoff and just drove all the way down and scored. And I thought, okay, Clinton offense might be here to play today. And then they got the other score. I think it was on a defensive, like a fumbled jet sweep or something like that in the end zone. And Clinton jumped on it, got a field goal to go through, and that was it. That's all they needed. The defense carried them on Friday night. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, neither team had 200 yards of offense. Clinton ran for 177.
It was a fast game, too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like I said, we were getting ready for my kid's party, so I had it on, and we were just listening to music, and I was just kind of glancing over, what's the score? And then I realized they're in the fourth quarter. I'm looking down my watch. It's barely 9 o'clock. They're going to be done here pretty quick.
Yeah.
And they were.
Now, 125 yards for Weatherford, 177 yards for Clinton, but the main stat, 2 of them. One, Weatherford 0 for 3 in the red zone. And the other, Clinton forced 4 turnovers and did not turn it over themselves. I mean, that's a recipe to win that game, obviously. So, in the 4A1 race, it's not technically over, but, man, it's really hard to find a way that Clinton isn't going to win 4A1. Games left on their schedule, at least within the district, home against Chickasha, then they finish with at Cache and at Woodward. It's just and with the 2 wins that they just earned back-to-back weeks over their fellow I-40 schools, that means every tiebreak is in their pocket. There can't be a 3-way tie anymore. I guess there could be with Chickasha and Elk City now, where everybody beats everybody. That'd mean the Big Elks have to win Thursday, and then Chickasha upset Clinton. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And maybe, I guess, Cache would be that way as well. But, man, what a turnaround. And I think when you listen to Coach Higbee after the games, or even talking to Dennis the other day, a big part of that was moving Rhodes and Sully back in the back end of that defense to the safety, getting those older guys with more experience on that back end, kind of as the last line of defense. Because if you watch that Heritage Hall game, they were just running up and down the field, and there wasn't as much resistance as there needed to be, to keep those home run hitting plays from happening. And here's the thing. If you can't hit home runs against Clinton, it's hard to just plot down the field because of how physical they are up front.
Exactly. This week, I'm just looking at the rest of their schedule, like you said. They
need to play Guyman this week. It's
they
not
play
on
Guyman.
there.
It's out non-district game because of the 7-team district. Chickasha at Cash at Woodward. Those all look very winnable at this point for Clinton.
Yeah, and here's the thing. They really have a mulligan in their back pocket. If the other games go how you think they will, because whoever wins, if either Elk City or Weatherford end up with only one loss in the district, it doesn't matter. Tiebreak goes to Clinton. So it's really hard to find a scenario, in my mind at least, where Clinton isn't the district champ, and now you got to figure out, okay, who ends up where with the rest of the district. But huge win for Clinton and Coach Higbee and those guys. They just the last 2 weeks, 38-7 combined over the other two teams that everyone felt would be right there in the race with them. So coming up this week, the Big Elks. And
what's still scary, just final thought on Clinton, is the offense. Again, 17 points this week, 21. Just 20. I say just. It still feels like if their offense gets clicking, gets humming, like it's always capable of doing. It's a dangerous team coupled with the fact they're playing really good defense. Interested to see when, or let's think about this. 4A2. I mean, could they have Bethany come into town? And
so
that was a really barn burner of a game last year. I mean, anything 4A2 coming anywhere, that's a tough district in its own right. So I'm interested to see how the playoff matchings happen and how those match up.
You would think eventually, because like even on Friday night, 0 for 2 through the air. You would think eventually they would have to make a play or two as the playoffs move along through the air to be able to get all the way to the end. But heck, maybe not. We've seen it before. But you would think if they would have to do something, make a play through the air at some point in a close game or in a big spot to keep the ball or whatever it is. But so far so good for the Red Tornadoes. Now everybody else is going to try to figure out how to A, make the playoffs, and B, fight for that second spot. That way at least the first game is at home in the playoffs coming up here in a few weeks. Class A, Merritt Oilers just dominated Burns Flat-Dill City for their first district win. So the Oilers now kind of behind the pack. There's a huge tie, a 4-way tie for second behind Fairview. Fairview's 3-0. Hooker, Texoma, Thomas, Moreland are all 2-1. Merritt's already lost to Moreland and Texoma. So if you start thinking about tie breaks down the line, obviously the Thomas game, the Hooker game are going to be the most important. Got to take care of the battle for Beckham County this week over in Sayre. Take care of that one. Then those next two games, you got a chance to be able to win one. If you win both of them, you're probably almost guaranteed to be in the playoffs because of the way the tie breaks go. But that's Merritt had to do what they did what they had to do, beating Burns Flat-Dill City. Now you got to take care of Sayre and then get ready and try to upset one of those last two teams in Hooker or Thomas.
Yeah, unfortunately, you got to go to Thomas. Fairview's a tough ask. So in bringing Hooker to Merritt, there's your opportunity. But it all doesn't matter. You got to win at Sayre if you're Merritt. You got to win at Sayre on. They play Thursday. Looks like Thursday night. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the.
Which, I mean, hey, maybe their offense woke up, scoring 57 points. That's hard to do, even with a really good offense. Does it make sense? But, you're battling the clock and everything. That's a great win for them. We said that last week. Kind of the same scenario of Elk City. It's almost a season-defining game that they had to have to keep their district hopes alive, and keep their playoff hopes alive. That was big for them. Way to come out and respond, Merritt.
Hollis finally into district play. They defeated by Laverne on Friday, 52-6. Now you play Beaver at Beaver on Thursday. That's a game that they're going to have, and then figure out a way to either beat Balco, Shattuck, or Turpin. It's pretty similar to A1 in that it feels like there's teams at the bottom. Beaver being one of those, being the bottom team in B1, win that game and then find a way to beat somebody in the one of the other top 5 teams. Beat one of them, and now you've got the tiebreak to be able to make it into the playoffs. And so very similar to last year in B1. where there was 5 teams for 4 spots. With Hollis being able to be one of those 4 teams last year, we'll see if they can end up doing it this year again. But yeah, tough. Laverne's good, and then you got Shattuck and Turpin, both undefeated. Turpin did get a district win over Beaver. Shattuck still hadn't played a district game just yet. Actually, yeah, they did. They played Balco Forgan this week. No score on that one yet. We can find that on the app, I'm sure. But good stuff in high school football. It's the weather's finally turning a little bit chilly when you wake up, and that means it's you're getting closer and closer to when those games really matter and the playoff time. I mentioned a couple of games at 4A1 that raised my eyebrows. Not that Blanchard beat Tuttle, beat them 20-6. Did you see how they did it?
Like 6 interceptions.
They did not score a touchdown offensively.
Yeah,
All 3 scores were defensive touchdowns, all in the second half.
that's nuts.
And then, surprised by that score in District 3. Wagner 15, Cushing 14.
Wow. No, I mean, I just now saw that. No, I'm not surprised. I think there's a culture there at Cushing where they it's not so much rebuild, it's reload kind of culture. But they had to replace a lot. But clearly, I don't think they're just they didn't have a huge drop off as far as talent was concerned. So, not too surprised. Not too surprised.
And then one other score, we've been kind of watching District 4 a little bit with Ada and Poto at the top of it. If you just go by the transitive property, looks like Poto was the far superior. Ada beat Hilldale a week ago 7-0. Poto beat Hilldale 56-0. So we'll get that one at week 9, I think, is Poto hosting Ada. That'll be the decider in District 4. Now, District 3.
No, it does give you a question, though, with and you compare scores and all that stuff, or look at margin of victories. But it does kind of close the gap between Poto and Wagner, I think, as far as the discussion of who's the best team in 4A.
Yeah, maybe so.
Isn't that fair to say? I mean,
well, what about
what they're doing, and then Wagner's struggling there with Cushing?
A team that I don't know the preseason hype for them, but what about McLean? Tulsa McLean in 4A3. They were the team that wasn't able to play a home game last year because of the shootings and stuff. And now here they are 3-0 with the next 2 weeks will tell the tale of them hosting Cushing and then going to Wagner after that. But I think that's fairly interesting to see them up there at 5-1.
I mean, their one loss is to a pretty dang good
Booker T
team out of 6A now.
I think they're 6A2.
Yeah, it's not a bad loss on their schedule, and all pretty dominant wins.
Here's what's crazy: we're used to Booker T being really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only game they've won.
Really?
It's against Tulsa McLean. Yeah.
Well, is this their first year in 6A2? Maybe they're having.
I think they've been there a couple of times.
They're having some problems adjusting.
That's pretty wild to see, though. 1-5.
They're just ready for basketball season. They're always good in basketball.
They're normally good in everything.
Yeah.
So that's the high school football wrap up from Friday night. Take a break. We'll come back. A wild finish in the Cotton Bowl. Were you physically tired at the end of that game?
I was physically tired after the first quarter, Aaron.
And it was like halfway through the first quarter. I look at Possum. I'm like, it's still halfway through the first quarter. I don't know if I'm going to make it. Let's take a look at the Western Oklahoma Realty College Pick'em leaderboard. I have climbed all the way back to 500 after just a horrendous start. Back to 500. Still way behind, but 7, 7, and 6 the last 3 weeks. So that's getting much better after the horrid 3, 3, and 4 to begin. So at the top of the leaderboard, Big Poppy and A.T. Suter. Brandon Embry right there close. Armand Dakota is close. TJ is close. Oh, Horns by 49. Oops. Not this year, but still doing a pretty good job of making picks. Oh, Joe Ray with a 9 out of 10. Getting up there at 10 over 500. Where did you go?
Man, I dropped to 16.
A 4 out of 10 week for you.
Yeah, I had a bad week this week. Last week was great for me. This week was
So you're pretty far up there last week. Let's take a look at the bottom. Let us see who controls the bottom. How many picks should we have? 60? Yep. Uh-oh. Somebody has tied Paul. Knoppe. 24-36. So we've got a tie at the bottom between those two. Let's see if there's somebody else there at 91st. Nope. But just behind, Drew, Tony, cousin Ray. Yeah, we're getting close. It's going to be close. It's going to be a battle for the top spot, and it's going to be a battle for that bottom spot as well. We appreciate Tyler Harrison, Robbie Allen, and all the gang at Western Oklahoma Realty. People before property is their motto. 225-6271. Give them a call for all your real estate needs. All right, Jared. What a wild, wild game down in Dallas in the Red River rivalry. The first quarter had everything. You know, a lot of times it takes 4 quarters to pack in everything that the first quarter had in play. A couple of interceptions, a block punt, a fake punt. Just, it was ludicrous to start. And finally the thing kind of settled down, and then there was, you played football. But gosh, for that first 9 minutes, it just seemed like every single play that was ran was such a momentum changer. It was just from a running back throwing a pass on 4th down for Texas for that first down, a fumble that got overturned. It was nuts in that first 9 minutes. But then as the game settled down, I thought both offenses kind of figured things out, even though it was a really weird day because both teams gave up 30. But with the way the offenses felt like they were going, it almost seemed like both defenses played pretty decent.
It didn't. When they were called upon, it felt obviously the goal line stand, but there's Texas needed to stop and to get the ball back and eventually take a lead. The defenses, you just throw away the stats, right? Because both offenses were humming too, but the defenses, when they were called upon, looked really good, and you can see why these are two of the top teams in not only the conference but in the nation that should not have a problem the rest of their schedule. That was an incredible game. And you mentioned the first quarter stuff. Funny story. I had group text. Everyone has a group text, and guy said, "Hey, I've been busy. I've been in Leedy. I haven't watched the game." This is right about the end of the first quarter. He goes, "What did I miss?" And I could tell him, "Are you kidding me?" Okay, let's talk about this. So, okay, you missed this check. And he was like, "Oh, in the first quarter." Yeah, it's crazy. Wild game. But one of my keys was the play of Dylan Gabriel, and he looked the part, man. Now he's thrust into the Heisman conversation, and rightfully so. He was fantastic.
See, and he is interesting too, because until the last 117, I would have told you he wasn't very good. He missed Stoops early on a 3rd down that led to the block punt. Instead of a first down, and Stoops had room to run at least out to the 30 or 35. Instead of that, it's a block punt touchdown. He missed Stoops on the sideline going right to left on your TV, which that would have had to have been, the 3rd quarter, on a 3rd and 4, threw it behind him, and the ball, it may have even been 4th down on that play where it got knocked away. It was 4th down.
I could almost argue Stoops ran the route too deep.
Yeah, but the ball is not where it needs to go. He threw it into the defender instead of where
Well, he threw it kind of behind him.
Yeah, further down the field.
Stoops running the marker. He ran a couple yards deeper than. Anyways, that's.
But still,
you got to make the throw.
Stogner, he missed Stogner on a 3rd down or a 3rd down in the 4th quarter. They were just sailed. It felt like he was a little bit reverting back to, and probably just the adrenaline of the moment, right? Because we forget, even though he's been there, he didn't play last year. And then all of a sudden, when the game mattered the most, it was just dime after dime after dime.
Well, I think that's what impressed me the most. But you about all those that you talked about, it didn't rattle him. He just stayed within himself, I guess, and looked like a veteran quarterback, especially that last drive. Stepping in the pockets, into the pocket and finding Stoops twice on that last-minute drive. And I can't explain the duck down thing at the line and come up and throw it over to Anderson. I don't know if that's a tick of his or if that was by design to get lost in the shuffle. But I thought his play, out of all that, I think it was throw the stats away, just like how he responded in every situation. When they needed to go down and score, when they needed a first down, they got it. And I just felt great for the kid because he couldn't play in the game last year and dealing with injury even at UCF. And so it's a really good story, and it's a kid you really like to root for. And so I said he was my key player of the game, and he was there at the end.
Man, his legs were such a big part of the game plan and keeping things going. Rushes 14 times for 113 and a touchdown, threw for 285 and a touchdown, and no turnovers. And that's part of the we were talking about the Oklahoma defense against the Texas offense. What's a good day? I think the three things I said was create a turnover, less than 150 yards rushing, and more than three or more sacks. And they missed that by 6 yards. The Sooners outgained Texas on the ground, 201 to 156. I don't think anybody in their right mind saw that coming. But
not with the run. That was the crate. I mean, Gabriel, $113 on the ground. I didn't think I saw that. I mean, you knew the running game was going to be a part of this offense, but not like over the century mark a part of it with Dillon Gabriel. I didn't see that.
No. I mean, hit the 44-yard one.
Sure.
That helps boost that number up before Oklahoma missed the field goal. But still, there were a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned answering, and it seemed like every time Oklahoma needed to score, they did. I thought down 14-10, went right back and scored a touchdown to take the lead back at 17-14. Another thing that I thought we saw that we'd have never seen a year ago, when Texas is coming back down before the half, they end up kicking the field goal at 17-17, but what happened? As that's going on, Venables calls 2 defensive timeouts to save time for the offense to then go back down. Should have had a touchdown if Gabriel doesn't miss that throw to Walker. He's out there leaking out wide open. He's kind of rushed it and threw it too low. Mm-hmm. But that's still – those are some of those things that Venables was so terrible at last year. I don't think there's any way he has the presence of mind that he's in the game as a head coach, as a manager of the game, to consider that a year ago.
No.
I think a year ago he's so wrapped up in stopping Texas's offense that it's like it short circuits a little bit, but not this year. He's running right down. I'm thinking, what is he doing? Oh, that makes it's something that we see every weekend in the NFL. When teams are going to go score, but you have timeouts and you have time, and it was brilliant, and showed, in my mind, tons of growth from BV, and then he did it again at the end.
Trust too. He trusted that his offense can do that, and you're right, he did.
And he did it again at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end, it's more obvious that you have to save time.
You got to do it, yeah.
But that was that was a couple of things. I thought one of the things for Texas that really, one of the biggest moments in that game was after the Sooners scored to start the third quarter to take a 27-17 lead. Then Bowen knocks it loose from Ewers right at midfield. Texas's defense 3 and out. I mean that was a point in that game where the horns were teetering, big time. And they were able to get that 3 and out against OU's offense that then allowed them to kind of settle back down and get back in the game and eventually take the lead. Sam talking about that last play, Walter Rouse blocking 2 dudes. The goal line stand, everyone was trying to think of another goal line stand. I know they had one, Oklahoma had one in that 2013 game up at Stillwater. Chuka Ndulie was a big part of that one in a game like that. But as far as, I mean, it's been forever since you see something like that.
Well, one that mattered.
Yeah.
I think we've seen goal line stands when the game is out of hand and the other team is just trying to score just to put points on the board and for style points or whatever. But that mattered. It mattered at that time. That I can't remember one that mattered like that. I can't. That was huge.
One other thing that I think contributed to Oklahoma winning the rushing battle, and it was something that wasn't even mentioned. You didn't even know it if you weren't just looking for this guy out on the field. But there was a point there before half or right after half. I can't remember the first time I saw him. Caden Green, true freshman, offensive lineman from up in Missouri, number 70, came in the game. And that was the point where all of a sudden you started seeing a few creases in the run game. Just, you know what I'm saying? Just in him pushing guys around, especially down on the goal line. He was a big part of Tawee Walker scoring both those touchdowns, kind of over him on that side. So kudos to that guy. He's one of those highly recruited type guys that Oklahoma has had on the offensive line a bunch. But I thought when he came in the game, the running game started to get better, and it ends up out rushing Texas at the end with Gabriel being a big part of that. So now question being, how good is this team?
I think they're as good as they want to be. You know, they can't just sit back because there's going to be heavy favorites in every game left on their schedule outside the Big 12 championship game if they make it. You know, how many times you hear that phrase of playing down to your opponent or looking past an opponent or something like that? The defense is good. I don't want to say great, but really, really good. A lot better, obviously, than last year. The offense, when it's clicking, it's really good. They are as good as they want to be. I don't know if that makes sense, but pretty good. Now, if you're asking me how do they compare to the Georgias or Ohio States or Michigans, I don't think they're quite at that level yet, but they're definitely not where they were last year. So I guess I'm kind of a wait and see. Like let's get some more. You know, I mean, there are opponents on this schedule that are left that are formidable. Kansas is one of them. I mean, we saw what could happen in Stillwater on a good night. So, Central Florida, the next one up. I mean, you never know. I mean, they've not been as great as the people thought they could be this year, but you never know with them. There's one more in my mind.
Well, West Virginia is undefeated in the conference.
Exactly. How about at BYU? Just still screams trap game to me. But if OU does what they do best, and so that's what we saw on Saturday against a really good Texas team. I'm not saying – I think everyone's trying to go, oh, Texas was overrated. I don't think they were. I do not think they were. I think those were two really, really good teams that played on Saturday in the Cotton Bowl. If OU plays like that against other opponents, they have a really good shot of winning out. Really good shot. So I think they're good. I think they're real good. That's my answer. Real good. Not great, though. Not at that Georgia-Michigan level just yet. What do you think?
I don't think they can get I mean, it's not that they can't win a game against them. But, I mean, if we're sitting here thinking, okay, is this a team that could win the national title? I don't think so. I don't. I just think that's almost too much to ask. But you know what? Everybody would have said the exact same thing 23 years ago coming out of the Cotton Bowl, even though they just destroyed Texas that year and this was a much closer game. It still took more to be able to kind of talk yourself into that. It took going to Kansas State and winning. It took beating Nebraska on your home field back in 2000. And there's just not those games on this schedule. Like in my mind right now, Oklahoma, if they take care of business, the next test is back in Arlington against Texas. Now, Kansas, it's crazy to say, but that at Kansas, at Oklahoma State, back-to-back weeks, that's not easy. For everything that especially everything that Bedlam game is going to mean this time, going to be the last one in a long time. And then, of course, Kansas, we'll see about Jalen Daniels. He's still not healthy, but they just ran right over. Was it UCF that they just destroyed this week, even with Bean as the quarterback? So, yeah, those are games that Oklahoma absolutely could lose going into, you know, looking ahead right now. And there's always one other that you don't expect that ends up being a fight. But I think the difference between Oklahoma now and Oklahoma has been is – a lot of times you lose those games like that because your offense isn't very good, and but the defense is what carries this team in a lot of ways, and defense travels, and so maybe that they're not as susceptible to a couple of those games that we've seen in the past because this is more of a defensive-minded team. We shall see, but I think they're definitely going to. In my mind, right now, they're going to be in Arlington. playing for the Big 12 title, probably against Texas again. And then from there, we'll see how the rest of the season plays out as far as what the stakes are in that game. Is it just a Big 12 title, or is it a playoff spot on the line when those two meet again? But way better than I think even a lot of people's wildest imaginations. If you had Oklahoma undefeated going into that Texas game, I don't think many people thought they could win it, like preseason, right? And so they're already way ahead of that.
Yeah.
Of any of that with the way they perform and especially how they've done it. How shocked were you on Friday night? As Oklahoma State was just pounding K-State there for a little bit and then hold on to win 29-21. It's not often like where you don't see something coming at all. I mean, I didn't even really believe what I was saying on Friday as far as here's how it could happen. Mm-hmm. It was just, words. And I'll be darned if they didn't follow that to a T. Do something good early, get the crowd in it, and next thing you know, golly, there they were.
I had a feeling. Go back and listen. I had a feeling Friday night, blackout, get a sellout crowd. They're hungry for a win, depended on how they respond after losing 2 in a row. So I had a feeling about it. Absolutely. It kind of felt like that trap game for Kansas State coming into that environment on a Friday night. So, and if things worked, and it worked. Howard was horrible. I thought I once that high school game was over and I switched it over, just watching Will Howard just shot put the ball over the place, and I questioned why were they going for 2 when they were down. They cut it down to 14. Or could have cut it down to 14 with an extra point, and they went for 2, and I thought that was real too early to do that, so kind of questioned the call by Kleiman on that one. But not injecting excuses, I think Oklahoma State came out, played good, and deserved to win that game. I had a feeling about it, Aaron. I did. I had a feeling that every time Oklahoma State gets pushed back in a corner like this under Mike Gundy, he kind of comes out swinging, and they did on Friday night.
Yeah, okay, so they weren't in the corner the week before against Iowa State after losing to South Alabama. It's shocking. I mean, find one person not named Robert Allen that actually picked Oklahoma State to win this game. Now, some picked I
said I had a feeling, but I didn't pick them.
You're going to pick that. Nobody's picking them to beat Kansas State on Friday. But, man, they played great. The defense was flying around, making plays. Outside of the one run that Howard had there in the first half where they kind of busted for that 70-yard on the quarterback counter or what have you, Oklahoma State's defense was fantastic, and so was Ollie Gordon. And I think when we start looking back at the end of the season, we'll see where it goes from here. But as much as the 3-quarterback thing was a mistake or seems like a mistake now, and not just picking somebody and going with them, and Bowman even talked about it after the game, now that he's kind of been installed as a starting quarterback, now he feels like he can be a leader. Now he feels like he can have the guys follow him. As much a mistake as that seemed like, a way more egregious one was not just putting Ollie Gordon back there and giving him the ball. Scott Wright before us had the stat about double-digit carries. Ollie Gordon's never not gone for 100 yards in his career at Oklahoma State if you've given the ball double-digit times. And behind that offensive line, that's an amazing stat. That's just how good that guy can be. and he's another guy that, maybe you stop him, and the next thing you know, he's out the gate and he's making big plays. So looking back at that, I think the coaching staff's going to just be kind of pulling their own hair out, thinking, what were we doing with a guy that is that talented and just not giving him the opportunities that they're finally giving him, and now there he is responding to that with a season high or a career high in carries and matching a career high in yards on Friday night, 21 for 136. So I think that's a big deal.
It's great to win. I think if I'm an OSU fan, I am frustrated because of everything you just said.
But not yet. Not yet.
Like, man, why weren't we doing this? Why weren't we doing this earlier in the year? Why didn't we do this against South Alabama at home?
I mean, that game, that's the one that's just crazy. That's the anomaly of this whole thing, was getting dominated physically by that team. And I don't know what's the coach supposed to do about that if his guys don't play. But here's the craziness about all of this. Saturday's a huge game for Oklahoma State. If they can beat Kansas, then go to West Virginia and get a win, all of a sudden, who was thrust up into that conversation about Arlington becomes the Pokes. Mm-hmm. Without having Texas on their schedule. Obviously, Bedlam's still there, but that's one of those crazy things can happen. And then, they still got all the newbies. Every new team in the conference they still have on their schedule. So I think Saturday's fascinating to see exactly what this was. Was it just a stopgap, or was this actually turning the season around, and now is Oklahoma State going to be a player to try to get themselves to Arlington? I think Saturday tells us a ton about that. A ton about it, if they're able to figure out a way to win that game. Now, if you want to talk about, you can talk about coaching atrocities all you want to, and you want to get mad at Mike Gundy, or you want to get mad at whoever. Those things pale in comparison to what we saw Saturday night out of Mario Cristobal. Miami had not played well against Georgia Tech, but they were going to win. All they had to do was kneel it down at the Georgia Tech 25-yard line, and the game is over. Take a knee, and it's done. Instead, they hand it off. Georgia Tech causes a fumble. 26 seconds later, they go 75 yards, 74 yards, whatever it was, for the game-winning touchdown. And here's what's crazy, Jared. It's not the first time Mario Cristobal has done this. In 2018, while at Oregon, he did the same thing against Stanford and eventually lost in overtime. Why? Did you see the video of the Miami offensive lineman?
Yeah.
What the F are we doing?
Yeah.
I don't know how he's not fired. That is a fireable offense, what he did on Saturday.
His excuses were just as bad, too. I think one of them was, what did he say? And someone tweeted it, so that is not a good look for if you're a recruit. When he kind of put the blame on, well, we got to hold on to the football. Like, well, maybe you should take a knee. It's easier to hold on to the football taking a knee than getting tackled and stripped. Now, if you're the quarterback, can you not call an audible there? Hey, guys, we're just going to take a knee here.
Hey, coach is trying to...
I'll run the laps. Don't worry about it. I'll run the stairs, whatever.
Coach is trying to screw us here. We're not going to let him. Let's just take a knee because the game is over. I can actually do math, and I can look up and see where the big board is below the little board. I get it. As soon as we do this, that's what's going to happen, and then the little time won't even be on because it's off because the game is over.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, just and for him to do it twice, he already did this once. He's already had to deal with this controversy and questions, and then he does it again. Ouch.
Wow. Yeah. It was
ludicrous.
Ludicrous is one word to use, yeah.
Just plain stupid is the other. But that was, boy, I obviously didn't see that live. I wasn't paying attention. And then went back and saw exactly what that was and was like, oh, my goodness. I mean, they would be burning the stadium down.
Yeah.
If that was here.
Yes.
Guaranteed. What else around the country? Notre Dame out of the playoff chase with the loss there at Louisville. I just think they simply ran out of gas. The third straight primetime top 25 matchup, second straight on the road, and I believe that the Ohio State and the Duke games just took it out of them. And now what do they have left coming up on Saturday for USC?
Yeah, that's a good one. By the way, take the over if if you're a betting man. Yeah, and then is that a product of them? That's their independence, and they make this schedule on their own. And you got to know when you're playing, when you're going to Duke, when you are going to Louisville, just so happen to be undefeated and ranked, they've circled that on their calendar a long time ago. Heck, we did it when they came to Norman. Like, we knew Notre Dame's coming to town. So I wonder if that's just a product of how they approach their scheduling. But, I mean, it just so happened that they didn't schedule Louisville thinking this is going to be a top 25 matchup at the time.
It has to do with the ACC stuff.
That too, yeah.
They never would have had this if they didn't kind of become a halfway member of the ACC.
Right.
Yeah, and then it just so happens that Duke and Louisville are good at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure when you first had 2 years ago or whenever that schedule was made, and you see, okay, Ohio State, a couple breathers, Duke, Louisville, road games, but that would be fine, and then USC comes to town. Instead, this year, they were both undefeated when they played them, and pretty good teams with pretty good quarterbacks. And
now, that being said, I'm not rolling them out against USC. USC's defense is horrid, and it is in South Bend, and it is a rivalry game, so I'm not rolling them out. But, man, you do got to wonder how much gas they have left in the tank after playing 3 really good opponents, now a 4th one.
It's a pretty good week for OU to have a bye week, I think, after the Texas win, and also just to go to watch what's coming, because you got Oregon at Washington.
It's a good one.
Obviously, the one we're talking about with USC and Notre Dame. Miami coming off that atrocity. They're at UNC. So there's some very good games, and then some even later UCLA and Oregon State. I mean this is a good weekend of college football, and probably a good time for OU to not have to worry about looking ahead to somebody. Take a week off and
heal up,
and get ready for UCF.
There's some bangs there. They were hitting each other on Saturday.
And, of course, OSU and Kansas. What time is that? It's a 2:30, isn't it?
2:30.
Yeah, 2:30 game there as well. So, good week coming up. A fun week of college football last week. All right.
Yeah, as stressful as this weekend was, especially that one game, I'm glad there's a bye week for OU. And as an OU fan, I can just sit back and just watch and relax and enjoy and not stress out.
Just think about all the other teams around the country having to stress because they're in a tight game or whatever it is. Hanging out here on a Monday following a wild college football weekend. Question on the text line, how was Gentry Williams' injury? I haven't seen anything about that. I know he was up at the podium after the game in the Cotton Bowl, along with some other guys. So one wouldn't think that it could have been too serious. I know he's had a shoulder that, listening to the radio broadcast a couple of weeks ago, Teddy Lehman talked about how it was just going to be something it was going to be kind of touch and go with those shoulder injuries during the season. You're not able to fix them completely, and it's just going to be kind of one of those things that comes and goes, and you're able to play with it, but sometimes you're not. But yeah, it sure felt like seeing him out there in front of the media at the podium, probably not as major as what Andrell Ethany could be, and I still haven't really heard anything about that. And I wonder, with the week off, normally we get some of that stuff coming today and for sure tomorrow with Brent Venables, but with the week off, I don't know that he'll have that weekly press conference. So we may be clear to next Tuesday before we get a real update as far as what those injuries were and what they're going to be looking at with Williams, with Anthony, and then, of course, Matoyer looked like he was in pretty bad shape, getting carted off and in a boot and all that kind of stuff. So that probably doesn't look great for the starting right guard there for OU. Another question on the text line was, who does Georgia? Georgia plays Vanderbilt this week, so probably not much to worry about for the Bulldogs against the Commodores. And really, Georgia's schedule outside of the cocktail party with Florida and then having to go to Tennessee, the schedule is pretty simple for the Bulldogs, especially with the clout that they have. Probably can afford a loss and still make it into the playoff. They're probably just fine. Another team, though, that has that same clout that looked really good this weekend was Alabama. Going down to A&M, being able to get that win. I thought Jalen Milroe was as good as I've seen him be, especially in an environment like that down in Aggie land. The game could have gotten away from Alabama a couple of different times, but it didn't. And then in the second half, Milroe made some plays, and that Alabama defense was suffocating. It felt like Max Johnson had nowhere to go, just constantly people in his face, and Alabama's defense shut the door on the Aggies. So, as much as everybody wanted to bury Bama, and they haven't looked very good after that Texas loss and some other struggles on offense, Bama's not going anywhere. They're still right there in the mix. And who would be just completely shocked if we get to the month of December and you've got Bama and Georgia in the SEC title game, Bama wins it, and all of a sudden Alabama and Georgia are both in the playoff. I don't think that's not going to shock anybody if that's the way the season plays out, with what seems like a wide open year in college football. Georgia, the 2-time defending champ, they hadn't looked great till Saturday night. And Saturday night they just whipped up on Kentucky. Is that the time? Is that kind of the point here where we start seeing Georgia become Georgia again? Carson Beck has been fantastic at quarterback. That seemed to be maybe a chance to as their kryptonite, maybe their Achilles heel, and Carson Beck's been really good. So I don't know if the fans that want to see Georgia take a big giant dip down because Stetson Bennett isn't there anymore. I don't know if you're seeing that. You might even be seeing a guy that has more natural talent than what Bennett has. And I can tell you one other thing. The game of football is made a whole heck of a lot easier when you've got that monster number 19 on your team, and that's Brock Bowers, one of the best tight ends, the best tight end in the country, and probably one of the better ones we've seen in quite some time in college football. That dude is an absolute stud, and he's clearly the safety valve for Carson Beck when things are kind of breaking down around him. He just finds 19, and 19 makes a giant play almost each and every time he touches the football. So Georgia would be just fine. I think that even though they haven't been as good as people thought, I do think they're probably the one that you can pencil in to a college football playoff bracket, in probably one of Michigan or Ohio State also, even though Penn State will have something to say about that down the line. But then who knows out in the Pac-12, and who knows right here in the Big 12. And there's still some undefeated teams in the ACC too. So there's a lot. It's kind of a fun year in a lot of ways because there's not that dominant couple of teams. It really seems pretty wide open, considering we're already through the first week of October's games. It's still kind of hard to tell exactly what's what in college football so far, and there will be games here coming down in the next month or so that will start to answer those questions. The first one in the Pac-12 is coming this week with Oregon and Washington, and then obviously USC having to go to Notre Dame. That's certainly a game that the Trojans can lose, considering all the games that they've almost lost against far worse opponents. One would think that Notre Dame offense, the brute strength that they play with, would not fare well for USC's non-tackling defense. But USC still has Superman on their side, and we've seen Caleb Williams be able to do insane things to get his teams to win, not only at USC, we saw it right here when he was at Oklahoma as well. So there's it takes a whole bunch to beat that guy. He is that good. Let's see if Notre Dame might have that special sauce to be able to knock USC from the ranks of the unbeaten. Got a Thunder preseason game tonight. It's crazy to think about that. We're already in the NBA. Major League Baseball, Rangers up 2-0. Astros and Twins split 1-1. Today the NL takes center stage with the Phillies, who won Game 1 over the Braves, and Arizona won Game 1 against the Dodgers. We'll talk tomorrow about the Dallas Cowboys' embarrassment. It was horrible, there's no doubt about it. It's been the Skinny on Sports right here on the Sports Animal.
You've been listening to the Skinny on Sports podcast with Aaron Cow. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to get alerts of when the latest podcast is available. Thanks for listening.
That ball is blistered to right. Way